Whiskey for the Ages is not sponsored or endorsed for any product or program mentioned in this show and receive no remuneration from their creators.
Hello, everybody. A warm welcome back to our Whiskey for the Ages podcast subscribers. I'm your host, Brian Dawson. Tonight, Hannah's here.
Big thank you to those of you who are tuning in for the very first time.
And Elora's again on remote.
Hello. Yes, still a college student. Can't wait for it to be done.
You're halfway there, just about.
I've only been doing school for like 20 years now, so...
Yeah, that's hard perspective to take.
Yeah.
Well, tonight I'm leading the show with one of my favorite segments, American Whiskey History.
It's a really big topic.
Yep, that's why it's been broken down over this series.
Yep.
So yes, this time I'm going to tackle the topic of 18th to 19th century indulgence and temperance. Big topic, but there's some numbers that are going to come across here that are just plain baffling. Of course, we're going to have some pours tonight too.
Yep, tonight we have 3 different pours that are meant to reflect the story that we're about to hear. Those pours would be Old Overholt Straight Rye. We've got Michter's US 1 Sour Mash and Old Pepper Rye Bottled-n-Bond.
Now, none of these are original 19th century recipes. Of course, those are lost to time, but the brands are historic, and we'll talk about that along the way. So if you guys are ready and your pours are ready, our first pour tonight is the Old Overholt Straight Rye Whiskey. Vital stats, it is a straight rye coming out of Claremont, Kentucky by Jim Beam, or Beam Suntory. Its mash bill is unpublished, but it's believed to be just over 51% rye. Again, the barrel char is number 4, but the barrel entry proof is unpublished. It's aged about 3 years. At 86 proof, it's bottled. And here's the kicker, $18.95 here in Idaho, with a fair price of about $22.62.
This is a pretty familiar one to us. For our listeners, this one is one that Dad and I have reviewed. It is available on our website. One of those hidden treasure products, I think, and kind of one of those ones that we like having around for an end of the night, top it off, close it out sort of whiskey.
Yeah. So what makes this historical? As I was digging in here, I did a Google search, for the oldest continuous use trademark brands in the United States. So the top 10 trademarked brands, or the oldest, I should say. Number 1, the oldest, is Ames. It's a garden tool and shovel company that's been around since 1774. And then Baker's Chocolate, the oldest chocolate manufacturer, since 1870, or 1780 rather. And then King Arthur Flour. How about this one, Elora?
You use that one, don't you? For your bread.
I only, I'm super bad about this. I go about my breads by the color of the bag.
Yep, wow.
I get the blue one, the blue and white
Yep.
one.
And that one's been around since 1790. Cigna, the insurance company, 1792. Dixon Ticonderoga. They're the pencil company. They've been around since 1775. And then Jim Beam whiskey got started in 1795. Colgate, the toothpaste company, been around since 1806. Crane and Company has been around since 1801. And then here's Old Overholt at number 9 at 1810. And lastly, top 10 to round out is the Hartford, another insurance company. I find it interesting. 2 whiskey companies
and two insurance
two insurance companies and a pencil company. I mean,
I think that kind of shows America, and I think it shows priorities.
So what do you guys think of the smell on this one?
It doesn't scream that it's a rye for me. Like, it's very bourbon-esque.
Well, it's got a lot of corn in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just about to say I can really, really smell the corn, and I get that it's 51%, and I'm understanding why the mash bill is only 51%, because it just doesn't scream a rye to me. It's very sweet. It smells very caramely, very sugary on the nose, and then when I taste it, it's very corn. Like, that's all I'm getting.
It is a pretty simple nose and palate. I agree with Elora that the caramel's there. I do get some rye. It's more forward on the palate than anything. Comes in as a nice freshness at the back end of it. Not going to be anything to punch your lights out. It's only sitting at 86 proof, so it's pretty welcoming to even a new beginner to whiskeys. But at the same time, compared to a lot of other 86 proofs or even a lot of other 90 proofs, it does have a little bit of warmth to it. I won't say a kick or a punch, but it does have a higher warmth to it than what you'd expect. And I would assume that that's because it is a rye and you have that inherent spice and freshness that you have to have with a rye.
Yeah, I was just about to say I can feel the warmth sitting in my belly.
Yeah.
Abraham Overholt is credited with the early production of whiskey for commercial consumption. Get this. He grew from 8 gallons a day to 200 gallons a day to meet the public demand. So,
Time's hard.
yeah, but that's kind of amazing that, here he is. He's got that early production credential. So let's just jump into our little story here. We're talking about the early years of American whiskey. Those of you have been following our podcast for a while. Back in, 2 years ago, we had podcast season number 1, episode 9. We talked about those early years. Spirits consumption began from the moment the colonists landed in the New World. And Americans, well, we've always liked to drink. Our European forefathers brought drink with them as they left Europe, and practically everybody drank. Even the Puritans called alcohol the good creature of God. Stills were brought along with them on the Mayflower. But alcoholic consumption was different before the American Revolution. By 1700, the colonists had many options. Not really whiskey so much, but they were drinking fermented peach juice and other fruit juice. They were doing
Brandies,
yeah, hard apple cider, and rum coming from the West Indies, from the sugars and molasses that was grown there.
Things that don't take as long to age.
Exactly.
You can get them going really quick over a season, put them in people's hands for consumption within a season.
Drinking was part of the colonial culture. People passed jugs and cups and bowls of liquor around at communal gatherings, on market days, and at elections. Candidates gave away free drinks to buy votes.
Which would not be legal today.
No. So that meant stingy or teetotaling candidates had no chance of winning. By the time of the American Revolution, now we're talking 1770s, colonists were consuming alcohol with every meal. People began the day with an eye-opener and closed it with a nightcap. And people of all ages drank, including toddlers, babies, They drank the sugared portions of a parent's mug of toddy.
Yep. Also something for medicinal purposes, too.
That's true.
Yeah.
So the average person consumed about, get this, 3.5 gallons of pure ethanol per year. Now, to convert that into a figure that's a little easier to understand, that's 8.75 gallons of 80 proof liquor per year. 8.75 gallons works out to 1,120 ounces a year, or 3 ounces a day for every man, woman, and child alive in America. And for sure, many people didn't drink.
Yeah.
So you have your 8 cups of water that you're supposed to drink, and then you got your half cup of alcohol.
Yep.
Well, that was the whole thing. People were drinking the alcohol because it killed whatever bacteria was in the water. Mm-hmm. Most of our founding fathers imbibed daily. Benjamin Franklin loved French wine and wrote about it often. George Washington had a still on his farm. During the Revolution, he wrote to the financiers to secure whiskey allotments. And specifically, he wrote, "The benefits arising from moderate use of strong liquor have been experienced in all armies, and that's not to be disputed." The exact ration of whiskey at Valley Forge is not known with certainty. However, using records pieced together from other encampments, historians estimate soldiers received a ration of a half a pint to a pint of whiskey a day. But here's the kicker.
It comes in pints?
It comes in pints. By 1872, the whiskey rations became standardized at 4 ounces of whiskey a day. So if you were in the Army, you're getting your 4 ounces a day. At the farewell party for George Washington's officers in 1787, after the war, a historic bar tab was found for 55 people that were in attendance. It included an insane amount of alcohol: 54 bottles of Madeira, 60 bottles of claret, a kind of wine, 22 bottles of porter, 12 bottles of beer, 8 bottles of hard cider, and 7 bowls of punch.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah, just crazy amount of alcohol.
But that really shows, the 12 bottles of beer, wheat-based spirits were not the predominant choice. It was these wines or porters or something that could be done with a fruit. So we're already kind of setting the stage or showing how wheat-based alcohols they just weren't the thing yet.
And keep in mind that bottles, who knows what a bottle was? A bottle could have been
a cask.
A cask. Who knows what it was? John Adams, our second president, began each day with a tankard of hard cider. Thomas Jefferson, he had a fondness for alcohol. He had a fine collection of wines, some of which still exist today. And then he also had rye whiskey made from his own crops. James Madison consumed a pint of whiskey a day. He's our fourth president. These people enjoyed their liquor. Mm-hmm. Whiskey was everywhere, and it had begun to be consumed daily. The number of factors led to the explosion of whiskey consumption. The first of which was whiskey production had begun in the early 1700s. European settlers had brought their skills with them. The federal government had begun to tax rum in the 1790s, and the British halted participation in the American rum trade. Rye whiskey became so much easier to get. And then after the Whiskey Rebellion in 1790, the sale of whiskey just exploded. As Hannah said earlier, whiskey was used medicinally and for sterilization purposes. And then in the 1800s, Western frontier had become America's Corn Belt. Now, when we talk about the Western frontier, that's Ohio, that's Kentucky, that's Tennessee. That's the Western frontier back in those days. There was an overabundance of corn, And if you think about it, what do you do with so much corn? You can't leave it in a pile. The rats and the mice and everything are going to come get it. So it was just easier to convert it to whiskey because it was easier to store and it wouldn't spoil. With so much whiskey available, prices dropped. By the 1820s, whiskey was going for 25 cents a gallon.
Wow.
That was cheaper than beer, cheaper than wine, coffee, tea, and even cheaper than milk. Drinking whiskey was the social norm. By 1830, many cities had a tolling of a town bell at 11 a.m. and at 4 p.m., which marked grog time. Saloons became social hubs where whiskey flowed, and corn whiskey had emerged as America's spirit.
But it had certainly started with this rye, with the Old Overholt rye and other ryes like it.
So now let's take a little quick pause. I'm going to pull in our second pour tonight, Michter's US1 Sour Mash. Obviously, it's a whiskey. It doesn't fall under a rye or a corn or a wheat whiskey. It's coming out of Louisville, Kentucky, Michter's distillery in this case. Mash bill here is 50% corn, 38% rye, 12% malt barley. Its barrel entry proof is 115, and then it's put out also at this 86 proof, the same proof as the last one we just had. Here in Idaho, $45.95. Shelf price out of Booze App is the same. And then I find this interesting. Booze App people who are buying this say a fair price for it, $71. So what do you think of this one?
I haven't had a chance to sip it yet. It definitely smells more like a bourbon than the Old Overholt does, but it is not a bourbon. But that 50% corn pushes it towards that direction. Nose definitely on the sweeter side of things. There's something fruity kind of lurking in the background. It's, again, like the Old Overholt, not particularly strong. The alcohol doesn't hurt. It's pretty welcoming. I haven't had a chance to sip it though, but I like the nose.
It's soft to me when I put it to the lips. And it should be. An 86 proof, it's not going to wow you or hurt you in any way. But it is different. Definitely not a bourbon. But it's also not a rye. I think it's just easy to drink.
It almost, now I've had a sip now, it almost tastes like a wheated whiskey. Not a wheated bourbon, but a wheated whiskey.
Okay.
So that softness comes into play very, very strongly here. It's a bit dry. I have to have another sip. What do you think, Elora?
I would agree that it's more of a wheated bourbon, and I would also agree that it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't want to punch me. It doesn't even want to have the same aggression as the Old Overholt. I will say, though, it is warm, spicy. Like, I'm getting cinnamon, I'm getting nutmeg, I'm getting cardamom. I made a coffee drink yesterday, and this reminds me of that, because I essentially put in a whole bunch of spices into the coffee blend, and then poured milk into it, and some Bailey's Irish cream. And honestly, this one just screams Christmas. Christmas spice.
Interesting.
I don't know if I get so many Christmas spices. I do get a little bit of cinnamon. There's a bit of citrus zest to it. I don't know if I want to go all in on a particular citrus, but there is a zing there that makes it a bit interesting. And it's different from virtually any other Michter's product I've had. You don't get citrus in a lot of Michter's products. So that's unique to this one. I like it. I don't know if it's worth $50.
Yeah.
But
definitely not worth the $70.
it's, yeah, 70 is kind of exorbitant. Like, but
I feel like they're asking 70s because Michter's is, I mean, there's a lot of expensive whiskeys under the Michter's label, so they're kind of maybe considering that, but
Michter's
no,
is
not.
Michter's is kind of one of those lines where it seems almost boutique-ish. You know, like it, because it's not mainstream like your Buffalo Trace or your Jim Beams or Heaven Hills or anything. Michter's is Michter's, and it just has this flair to it that I don't want to be like the others. I want to be special, and sometimes I think the price gets wrapped up in that.
Yeah, I agree. So how this ties into history, back in 1753, there were as many as 3,000 private stills owned by farmers in Pennsylvania alone. There was a guy by the name of Michael Schenck who had filed a patent for a grist mill located near what is now Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania. And that's where the somewhat challenging to prove or disprove distillery history began. The Schencks owned the distillery from that early time, the 1750s, right up until the 1860s. And then they sold their distillery to a Abraham Baumberger. And the Baumbergers owned it into the early 20th century, and finally he sold to an Ephraim Sechrist just before Prohibition. After Prohibition, Sechrist sold to Lewis Foreman, and Lewis Foreman allegedly finds a whiskey recipe in the attic of one of the property buildings. He has this Everett Beam come to work for him, and we all know the Beam name. And about this same time, Foreman decides to change the name of the business to Michter's Distillery. And I found this kind of interesting. The way he arrived at the word Michter's, it was the names of his two sons, Michael and Peter. Michter is how the Michter's name came to be. 1951, Charles Everett Beam begins to try to recreate this whiskey from this alleged recipe. And that's where the Michter's original sour mash whiskey came from. What we're drinking is that original recipe, or supposedly the original recipe. Then in the mid-1970s, Michter's drew upon their long history, claiming that the whiskey made on their property 200 years earlier may have been provided to revolutionary soldiers.
So, but it wouldn't have been under the Michter's name.
No, it would have been under the Schencks name.
So they're trying to say that the Michter's recipe harkens back to a Schencks recipe supposedly served to
the soldiers. Now again,
this is a lot of mental gymnastics.
I mean, I guess it's whatever gets the sales out. I mean, I'm gonna go for the thing instead of like old Joe down the street, had this glass of whiskey. No, George freaking Washington had this whiskey. You're gonna want it.
Well, whiskey's always been something that's meant to have a historical check mark with it, and 1950s isn't really all that historical compared to a lot of the other big names and brands.
So they loosely tied together chain of events goes all the way back to the 1750s, which brings us back to our indulging ancestors. In the 1800s, the booze ceiling became smashed. Americans have long been called a nation of drunks. There was an English travel writer sending home stories back to England by the name of Frederick Marriott, and he wrote in his 1837 Diary of America, "I am sure The Americans can fix nothing without a drink. If you meet, you drink. If you part, you drink. If you make an acquaintance, you drink. If you close a bargain, you drink. They quarrel in their drink. And they make it up with the drink. And they drink because it's hot, and they drink because it's cold. If successful in elections, they drink and rejoice. If not, they drink and swear. They begin to drink early in the morning, and they leave off late at night. They commence it early in life, and they continue until they soon drop into the grave. So,
You need to call me out, guys.
Yeah, like I feel a little called out. Like,
I'm not very bad off it. Like 75% of the time with that.
so remember,
Good 75%.
yeah, so remember, before or right around the time of the Revolution, Americans were drinking 3 ounces a day. By 1830, alcohol consumption had reached an absurd peak, an outlandish 7 gallons of ethanol per person per year, which more than doubled the amount less than 30 years earlier. That's 6 ounces a day, every day, 365 days a year for everyone, man, woman, and child. Put it in perspective, yeah, that's 90 bottles of 80 proof whiskey per person per year.
1800s actually sucked. Like, no, legitimately. They legitimately suck.
By comparison, today's drinking Americans, not everybody, but just the ones who drink, only consume 2.4 gallons of ethanol per year, or just over 2 ounces a day. That's still a pretty large number.
Yeah.
But you're right, Anna. You were saying something about Frederick?
Yeah, like Frederick can look at that number and we've gotten better.
We've gotten better.
We've curbed the habit a little bit.
Yep.
I don't drink that much. I only drink this much.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm down to 2 ounces a day.
Improvement. It's hard, man.
Yeah. There's other reasons why this was happening too. The economic importance. Agriculture. The surplus grain got converted to whiskey and provided farmers with a stable income. Industrialization and innovation. The Industrial Revolution brought advanced distillation technology. Instead of a pot still, now they're making column stills, and they could vastly improve the amount they were making daily. And then when it finally got approved, whiskey taxation provided revenue for the young nation. Whiskey taxes helped pay off the Revolutionary War debts. And then, of course, market expansion, whiskey became a significant export product. We didn't have much to give to Europe, but we could certainly send whiskey back that way.
I got this.
Yeah. And that's why I say an absurd total. So we're going to just move right along. Let's look at that third pour we have.
Before we do, I want to say a little bit more about this Michter's here. As I'm continuing to sip it, I'm liking it more and more. And I don't really have the greatest extent of a reason why, but it's just sitting nice. It's just warm.
It's easy
solid.
to drink. Really easy to drink.
Yeah, it's really friendly. Like, this one is just a friendly whiskey, I think would be the adjective I'd use to describe this one.
It's a good sit down. I don't think it's like, I mean, you can certainly have it with a group of friends. You can certainly have it in celebration, but I wouldn't mind, sitting out on my balcony and just having a glass of this after a concert or even just a long day of classes.
Yeah.
Between the Old Overholt and the Michter's, the Old Overholt bites.
Yeah, it does.
And not in a bad way, but it has a little bite to it.
Yeah.
And then the Michter's just smooths right out. And it's interesting, both of you said wheat. There's no wheat in it.
I know, which is
but it's
the
so
biggest
soft.
shock to me.
Yeah.
So
It's very interesting.
let's peel back the onion just a little bit. We said sour mash. So what's sour mash? Sour mash essentially is you are leaving a portion of the fermented grains in the vat and then pouring new grains and water in on top of it. It's also like a starter, like you're making bread. The sourdough bread.
Sourdough bread, your sour starter, yeah.
So that's...
We need to get canning jars and start that, or just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about this third one here? Now we're going to jump into the Old Pepper Rye. It's bottled in bond, so we're going up in proof. We're up to 100 proof. It's a straight rye, made in Lexington, Kentucky, by the James Pepper Distilling Company. Mash bill is undisclosed because it's a blend of two mash bills. So it's 95%. One of them is 95% rye and 5% malt barley, and the other one is 100% rye. So this is really rye.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Barrel char is unpublished. The entry proof is unpublished. There is no age statement. However, it's aged at least 4 years. ABV, or alcohol percentage, 50% or 100 proof. And it's priced at the same as the Michters at $49.95. So,
On the nose, it's, compared to the other two, almost straight ethanol, which is appalling for something that's 100 proof. Like, it zinged my nose hairs a bit in a way that I would expect something 120 plus proof to do.
but it doesn't taste that way.
No, it doesn't taste that way at all. When I have a taste of it, the rye is boom, I am here. I am in your face. I am making a statement. I mean, I almost want to say that it's a rye that if it had a ponytail, it'd be like swinging that ponytail around and doing hair tosses and hair flicks with it, because it has a very strong rye sass to it. But underneath is actually, I got cherries out of it, which is really atypical for a lot of rye experiences that I have, where when I do get fruits, it's like the other two, where they're a bit more on the citrusy note than they are on a berry or a red fruit.
I would
deeper
say
kind of note.
that I too get the cherry, but it's almost like a cherry that's been soaked in alcohol for a while.
Yeah. Like, it kind of makes you pucker a little bit.
Yeah, they're not sweet cherries, they're sour cherries.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree with you both on a lot of things.
Of course you are.
Yeah, it's just my nature. But I mean, I stuck my nose to this and I couldn't get anything. So I stuck my nose like really into it and I still couldn't feel any of that burn. I did not get ethanol. I got the cherries, but they're sweet maraschino cherries. I'm not having much of a reaction to this. And when I drink it, it drinks like a rye, but the Old Overcoat punched me more than this, like substantially more than this is punching me.
And you know what? I agree with you.
I think that this does have a higher alcohol. Like, I can taste the higher alcoholic content in this one. I get the sour cherry, like what you're saying, Dad, and I do get the maraschino cherry, like what you're saying, Elora. I get them both. It's really, really unique. We have had the opportunity to have James Pepper Rye barrel proof. I don't remember what the proof of it was, but significantly higher, probably around the 120-ish mark. So this is substantially lower, but I really like this.
Of course you do.
I really, really like this.
I think the reason why you might be getting more of a punch out of the Old Overhaul, Elora, is it's a $20 rye. It isn't as refined.
That's a good point.
This is more refined. it's more controlled, if you will. Yes, there's alcohol here, but it's more palatable to me. At 100 proof, it's more palatable than the 86 proof rye from Old Overholt.
That being said, like, I've got no problem with enjoying the Old Overholt. I do genuinely like it. I really, really like the Old Pepper. I've got a soft spot for Old Pepper, just like I do for Old Forester. I've really liked all the Old Pepper whiskeys that I've had. So,
including the American single malt.
Yeah, including the
yeah. I genuinely like that one too, and I'm iffy about the American single malt. I think it's still a acquired taste that I gotta do. But this one, it just is very, very easy for me. I would be really happy to drink this on any occasion, celebration or not.
It does have a refined quality to it, for sure. $50 for this one
is a steal. Yeah.
This is a steal.
Yeah.
This one, fair market price, could very well be into the $70 range, and I wouldn't bat an eye at it. I'd grab it, no question.
I usually don't say this because I think whiskey is just too strong of a liquor to really try this out with, but I'd be curious to see how this would pair in a whiskey sour. I usually don't say yes to whiskeys being involved in cocktails, only because they're too strong. But this is just citrusy enough to where I think you could get away with it.
And maybe so.
Put like a maraschino cherry in it and an orange slice. I think you could really make something out of it.
Maybe so.
I don't say that often, but...
Yeah. So bourbon history is not complete without mentioning the Pepper family. 3 generations of the Pepper family distilled whiskey in Kentucky. The Old Pepper Distillery was also known as the James E. Pepper Distillery.
I mean, there's even the James E. Pepper products that you see for like $35-$40 that are called 1776. That's the kind of recognition that this one has.
Exactly. It's one of the oldest U.S. whiskey brands. Early beginnings, Pepper Whiskey Legacy began with Elijah Pepper, a small operation in 1870. Or 1780, rather. I keep getting my words mixed up.
Your numbers.
My numbers. Yeah. In the early 19th century, Elijah's son, Oscar, took over the distillery. Oscar partnered with a famed chemist and distiller by the name of Dr. James Crowe. Crowe scientifically improved the sour mash process. And then during the 1830s, the legendary Old Crow brand was born under the distillery, the Pepper Distillery. And then the whiskey was the favorite of Ulysses S. Grant. So much so that during the Civil War, Lincoln was known to say, find out what brand Grant drinks, and I'm going to send it to all my generals.
That's a question.
Kind of pulling one from Washington's playbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have to ask, does this have any correlation to Jim Crow?
That's what I was going to ask.
Well, we talked about that in a previous history episode, and no, it doesn't. 2 completely different people.
How unfortunate for this one.
Dr. James Crow was actually educated in Scotland, specifically in the University of Edinburgh, where he became a chemist. That's where he learned how to learned his skill of being able to blend things and how he was able to master the sour mash process. The Colonel James E. Pepper, the most famous member of the family, he was Oscar's son. James took over the business in the late 1800s. James Pepper was a promoter and a well-known whiskey figure in history. He expanded his brand and marketing it as the oldest and best brand of whiskey made in Kentucky. and he was also highly instrumental in expanding whiskey to Europe. But back to our topic. Keep in mind, we're drinking, 7 ounces of whiskey a day? Or 6 ounces of whiskey a day? Now, the people might have been happy, but not everything was rosy. By the early 1840s, Americans began to lose their whiskey thirst. Overindulgence was impacting economic productivity. Workers who drank excessively were not very reliable.
What? That's crazy.
Excessive drinking contributed to social problems such as domestic violence, poverty, and crime. Saloons were hot spots for the rowdy behavior and violence. Families of heavy drinkers frequently suffered economic hardships. The diversion of income to alcohol left more families hungry and in poverty. Chronic overindulgence led to widespread health issues. We didn't know about addiction at that time. We didn't know about alcohol poisoning.
This would have been the same time that people would use the tears of the poppy in order to treat pain, which would get people hooked on opium. And that was like the beginning of the opiate crisis. And the addiction was not talked about in the same way, wasn't recognized as much of a epidemic as it was someone individually having a malfunction to essentially a side effect to what they were imbibing.
Alcoholism.
The closest we got to opium addiction being a concern, like widely talked about, was the opium war in China, where we would ship out opium because you could easily sell it, and Chinese officials all of a sudden started telling U.S. officials stop sending it, but we obviously said no because it would get us money, and it resulted in a very, very deadly conflict. Not great. Not great.
And as Hannah said, the concept of alcoholism, and Elora, you noted the drug addiction, it's a disease that was still developing. We didn't know about it. At the time, there was no proper treatment options. So naturally, it fell on the communities. Communities had these increasing costs of health care. They couldn't care for the poor. They couldn't care for policing. They had all these things. And then on top of all these reasons for drying out, the United States was becoming more industrial. Agriculture was being left behind for a world of machinery. Johnny was leaving the farm.
And machinery and alcohol or any substance is really not a good mix.
Exactly.
So many accidents.
Yeah.
So many really bad ones.
Yeah. So the transporting of grains became more efficient. You didn't have to store your grains anymore. You didn't have to turn it to alcohol to transport it. So the distilling to preserve corn or rye was no longer needed. Whiskey began to lose its economic grip on the nation. Goods such as shoes and books could be made, in mass production. Factory workers began opting for coffee and tea breaks rather than participating in the daily grog time at 11 and 4.
You had obscene working hours, so you needed to stay awake while alcohol, that you didn't know at the time, was a depressant.
Exactly.
Something to wake you up, so caffeine.
In response to this, there was lots of reform movements. Some women played a huge and crucial role in the temperance movement. They were seeing firsthand what was happening to their families. Mm-hmm. Dad was coming home drunk, beating his wife and doing whatever. It was,
and then spending all of the hard-earned money on
alcohol.
Liquor, and she's trying to take care of the kids, take care of the house, and not having any other opportunity to do anything else. She's stuck.
Yep.
And seeing and being forced to witness the downfall of her family and not having a whole lot of opportunity to fix it, because that just wasn't the time. Women didn't have that power.
So
People who drink a lot know of Angela's ashes, and that's a huge part of
And
Yeah.
Angela's ashes is
Yep. Temperance activists employed various means and methods to spread their message. Pamphlets, lectures, public demonstrations, newspapers. They aimed at educating the public about the dangers of alcohol abuse and to promote sobriety. Prohibition began to be discussed. Keep in mind, we're in the 1800s here. Temperance movement pushed for legal restrictions on alcohol. They set the stage for local and state prohibition laws, culminating, of course, with national prohibition in 1920.
took a long time to get there.
The
So I
key,
do have a question about that, though.
yeah,
This all was happening, Prohibition. I imagine this has something to do with the women's suffrage movement, too.
a little
Because
bit.
what if
Yeah.
the
Yes.
husbands were coming home and they're
Mhm.
like, I've got no freaking clue what's going on with the country, while the women would be having all the sense, and they're like, well, our votes don't count,
Hmm.
so how can we get our votes to count?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
It
So
was
there's some
all-
milestones.
Yeah, it was all definitely wrapped up into one
Yep.
entity.
So key,
Correlated, definitely.
yeah. So the key temperance milestones, the first significant organization, the American Temperance Society, ATS, was founded in 1826. By the 1830s, the ATS had over 1.5 million members, and the ATS promoted total abstinence from distilled spirits. Then the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which still exists, by the way, founded in 1874, and then later led by a Frances Willard, became one of the most powerful organizations advocating for temperance and women's suffrage. Just exactly what the two of you were mentioning. The scientific temperance instruction began. A person by the name of Mary Hunt led the campaign for scientific temperance instruction, ensuring public schools included alcohol danger in education, aiming to inform and protect future generations from the harms of alcohol.
Like Red Ribbon.
I was just going to say, this is kind of the beginning of the Red Ribbon movement.
Yeah. Temperance literature and speeches began happening. A guy by the name of John Bartholomew Gall, a former alcoholic who turned temperance advocate, gave powerful speeches across the country. Again, literature and publications such as The Alcoholic Republic was put out by a W.H. Rohrbaugh, and it provided historical analysis of America's drinking.
And temperance was something that quickly, the meaning of it quickly expanded into a whole lot of different areas beyond just alcohol. It was overindulgence in everything, whether it was gambling, whether it was brothels, whether it was just corporate greed, whatever. I mean, Thoreau was, you got Thoreau, you got Hemingway and all those other guys who are coming in, and Thoreau's going out and living in the woods and promising a humble life for himself. And it's all wrapped up into this, let's roll it back. Let's stop with the overindulgence of everything.
As a student, you learn about all these events independently when, in fact, all of them are correlated.
Oh, yes.
Right. And how many times have I said it? Whiskey needs to be taught in American schools.
It really is kind of fundamental to a lot of movements and a lot of behaviors in what this country has done and purported to believe in. Its values are rooted in it.
By the late to mid 19th century, legislative actions began to take place. Numerous states enacted temperance laws. In 1851, Maine drafted a law by a guy by the name of Neil Dow, and it was one of the earliest and most influential temperance successes. The law prohibited the manufacture and sale of alcohol in Maine. It set the precedent for other states. Massachusetts enacted several temperance laws, including restrictions on the sale of alcohol, restrictions on taverns and when they could be open, and restrictions against public drinking. Vermont adopted a temperance law similar to Maine. They banned the sale and distribution of alcohol.
Now, I do want to say something. Those states don't exactly scream a whole lot of corn agriculture going on. What can you grow in those states? People from those states, please tell me. I don't know. I'm ignorant. But yeah, so was it easier for those states because they couldn't locally grow those?
And as a result, they're not spending as much money bringing those products into their states.
Or maybe that's where they were getting them. They were buying so much.
Right. So, but then you can divert your taxes to something else.
Exactly.
Other than this. So it shows, hey, we can improve these other things in our lives if we divert this money to something else. I think that's a good question, Elora.
New York passed an excise law in the middle 1800s regulating alcohol sales to curb excessive drinking. In 1855, Indiana implemented a statewide prohibition, although it was repealed just a few years later because of enforcement difficulties. Ohio had several local and statewide temperance laws, including laws allowing local communities to decide whether or not you restrict or permit alcohol. Rhode Island enacted laws restricting the sale of alcohol, mirroring the greater New England temperance laws. Mm-hmm. And then Michigan passed temperance legislations, much like Ohio did, to allow municipalities to decide on legal alcohol sales.
In a lot of ways, you've got Ohio, Indiana, Michigan there, but in a lot of ways, this is kind of your original 13 colonies that are leading the charge here and trying to do something, right or wrong. You got the original colonies here that are making a move.
So there's some,
especially.
Yeah.
So there's some notable people here. Lyman Beecher. He was active from 1826 to 1863. He's the co-founder of the American Temperance Society. He delivered and published 6 sermons on temperance. Incidentally, he was the father of Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. The John Bartholomew Gow, which I mentioned earlier, he's a reformed drunkard. He was a temperance orator and lecturer. There was an Amelia Bloomer. She was active from 1849 to 1894. She edited a newspaper which began as a temperance journal. She was also a women's rights activist and a temperance advocate. Neil Dow, who I mentioned earlier, up in Maine. Frances Willard, she was president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. Mary Hunt, leader of promoting scientific temperance instruction. And Elora, you mentioned Carrie Nation. She was
the axe-wielding badass woman.
Yeah, she was known for destroying saloons. She was active from 1900 to about 1911.
I think it's really, important for us to take a pause here. We all know what's coming, 1911, Prohibition's around the corner, whole amendment in the Constitution of the United States of America and everything. We know it got repealed. We know where we're at now. But I think it's equally important to recognize the situation that all of these people, primarily women, though of course there were a lot of men who were advocating for what the women were saying, the situation that they were in was not good. They're drinking essentially 6 ounces of alcohol a day, pure alcohol. Women are being attacked in their own homes, being forced to endure the economic hardship that their spouses are forcing upon them. And who knows what that's doing to the kids who have to be able to go to school and be fed and have their own health care provided and everything else. We all know that Prohibition didn't work out. It's not something you can enforce. But I think realizing the situation that these people were in, their response to it is completely normal.
It's pretty impressive.
It's really impressive. It's heartbreaking that that was the situation for millions of Americans, especially women and especially kids, because you don't know how many kids were getting beat up on by dad when he came home drunk out of his mind either. And the Times said we need to do something, and we need to do something now. And it could very well be that today's consumption of alcohol, the 2.42, whatever it was, the result of Prohibition, the result of this temperance movement, we may be still feeling it today and just not recognizing or acknowledging it as such. But I think it's really important to not demonize this movement or laugh at this movement or think it's crazy, because it's actually something that was really important to these people and led to them wanting a better life for themselves and their families. And, you know, I think it's really commendable that they were able to get so far as to ratifying the Constitution, not just for Prohibition, but to getting the women the right to vote. It's a really big deal, and it is rooted in whiskey. It is rooted in alcohol. It's sad that these are things that had to be the things that motivated the change, that motivated these additions and amendments to the Constitution. But here we are.
And like you said, Hannah, the culmination of the temperance efforts manifested in the passage of the 18th Amendment in 1919, and it led to national prohibition, which took place from 1920 to 1933.
I want to add to what Hannah also said. History teachers out there, you got a duty. Do not brush over these topics. They are still relevant today. They're very, very relevant today. I know my personal history experience in school, a paragraph was written about the Prohibition, and then they moved on. Just a paragraph. And then the next day. I don't think we even spent 15 minutes on it. So really dig into those topics. Seriously, like, get the students involved.
The students would love it.
Yeah.
I would think the students would love this.
Give them simulations. Like,
I mean,
give them a project to where, you know, they're a group of a family and they have to make ends meet. Seriously, it teaches them world experience like that.
Yeah.
Another thing is Hannah, I think you have way more experience in knowing about this, but epigenetics, the whole like grandchildren trauma. I mean,
yeah, and what Elora's mentioning there, this phenomenon that's called epigenetics. In brief, I won't go crazy in detail here, but in brief, geneticists are finding that when a very traumatic experience or chronic trauma happens to someone at a young age, that trauma can actually leave, essentially, metaphorically, a scar on their genetics. That scar doesn't get immediately imparted onto their offspring. However, we do see that that scar happens to show up in the grandchildren. And then the grandchildren have experiences as though they lived that chronic trauma. So children who are growing up in abusive homes from alcoholic parents, or children who grew up in a war zone or in insane poverty, that kind of thing leaves a mark generationally. So what we do today isn't just affecting our children, it's affecting generations down the line. So it's really important to know these things and to know what we do has impact, has monumental impact on the future of a family, on the future of a community, all the way up. I don't think it's irrational or hyperbolic to say all the way up to a national level.
Yeah. I mean, the grandchildren of this time period that Dad's speaking of, I think they were also grandchildren that, went into World War One.
Mm-hmm. World War One, World War Two.
Yes.
Yeah. We had Elora and I had one grandparent that served in World War II and another grandparent that served in the Korean War. So we, fortunately, neither of our grandfathers experienced trauma that we could feel today. But that's something to think about. You think about grandchildren of people who survived the Blitzes in London, or the Irish famine is a really big one. Anything major like that. So alcohol abuse factors into it. It does. So it is really important to talk about it in terms of education, to know, like, this is where we're going, yeah, but where did we come from as a nation? And where did we come from as a community or as a family? And providing that knowledge to our young people, I think, can make them better informed about themselves and make them better informed about what they want their future to be.
She wasn't my teacher, but I was a TA for a high school English class, and she had an amazing way of teaching this type of stuff. Like, she'd go beyond, like, okay, let's assign the book, and, let's do an activity. The way she would teach about David Thoreau, Hemingway, or a lot of those people that I can't, transcendentalism. Yeah, transcendentalism was one branch of this entire movement. She had a lot of group projects. She did one thing where the students were told, okay, you need to act like a person doing a sermon, and you need to tell them to repent doing something, like break a habit. Or she would tell them, okay, you guys are the teachers, let's do the activity and kind of simulate, writing a poem that reflected like Thoreau or like something. She would go into a lot of detail on this. So yeah. I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong, but this is something you need to spend more than one class period on.
I think it can be a really untapped discussion here, and haha, pun intended, untapped, but it all loops back to what we're saying here, that alcohol, and especially whiskey, is kind of fundamental to where we are today and why a lot of things happened the way that they did, and why it's really crazy to think about. And I love these history episodes, Dad, that you present, because it really brings it home that whiskey can have this impact. And it's something that should be talked about a heck of a lot more.
Certainly, overindulgence in temperance is a heavy topic. And we don't mean to make light of it in any way. In fact, we as people who enjoy this spirit probably have a bigger obligation than we're aware of.
We do have, our tagline on our website, Exploring Whiskey Responsibly. That's something that we've always wanted to really nail down in our messaging. And it's something that we want to make sure that other people are aware of, that yes, you can enjoy these spirits. You can also have respect.
Well, let's change gears. Lighten up a little bit.
I don't regret,
No, this is a good
going down
topic.
that rabbit hole.
Because it's a very
it's
good
important.
topic. Yeah.
It's important.
So this fortnight in whiskey, some whiskey headline news, links for this episode here. The U.S. port strike was averted. Yeah, the U.S. port strike postponed until January. So why should we care? I mean, big deal, it's a port strike. But nearly 50,000 U.S. port workers could cause a severe disruption in the spirits sector.
Not to mention virtually every other
Aspect.
sector.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big deal.
The International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA, union served 36 East Coast ports and Gulf Coast ports. The cause? The U.S. Maritime Alliance, USMX, are enjoying rich billion-dollar profits. Shippers have increased prices for containers, rising from $6,000 an empty container to $30,000 for a full container. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I'm in the furniture industry. Imagine we're putting furniture inside of a container. The container costs more than the furniture inside of it. I mean, it's just stupid. President and CEO of the Distilled Spirits Council of the U.S., DISCUS, Charles Swanger, said in 2023, 77% of the U.S. distilled spirits exports and 43% of the distilled spirits imports pass through these East Coast ports. Any port disruption could cause a bottleneck in the supply chain, which would delay product deliveries and create product shortages in and outside of the United States. The COO of the alcohol importer MHW, John Wren, added it would take approximately 1 week for beverage alcohol importers to recover from a one-day strike. It would take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to recover from a 1 week strike. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of these union workers who are who are participating in this strike are doing so because we have that increase in the shipment container from $6,000 to $30,000. There hasn't been an equal or proportionate change in the union workers' pay who are working on those ports. That's why this strike happened in the first place. And COVID did a real doozy on them as well.
Exactly. So the industrial...
Inflation.
Say again?
Yeah, and inflation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Inflation, yeah.
The industrial strike action has been postponed until mid-January 2025. It's hoped that the ILA union's current contract with the MSX will be extended. Let's hope contracts are resolved. None of us need to be paying more because of what Elora noted, inflation. My next story, Jack Daniel's shares concerns about the future of its product. No one cares about regeneration until you tell them it's going to impact their bourbon. Now, what are we talking about regeneration here? If you're a bourbon drinker, you should be concerned as well. White oak forests are in global decline. Not only do white oaks provide habitat, food, and shelter for many species, white oak is the cornerstone of our bourbon. White oak must be aged in new American oak barrels. If we're running out of oak, we got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
White oak is used because of its strength, its flavor profile, and the rich color it gives the bourbon. Brown-Forman, the parent company to Jack Daniel's, is fighting to save white oaks through the Dendra Fund.
This is something that we talked about a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago when we did the Old Forester
Exactly.
expose that I led. The Dendra Fund was a big part of their charitable action.
Yep. The nonprofit Seed Fund advocates for federal policies to protect and manage oak forests throughout the joint action. The bourbon industry recognized the potential threat as far back as 1998. Without oak trees, we have no product. Basic. Simple.
Yeah.
The Trellis Group empowers professional communities to confront the climate crisis. According to Trellis, oak tree reduction has been recorded in 39 countries. 31% of the 430 known oak species are on the verge of extinction. That's nearly a third.
It practically is.
I mean, that's
practically
scary.
is. Only a couple
Invasive
points
species, drought, fires, soil compaction are primary reasons for this.
Climate change.
Dendrifund partnered with American Forest Foundation and the University of Kentucky to launch the White Oak Initiative, a diverse coalition of partners committed to long-term sustainability solutions for American white oak. The initiative's goal is to regenerate 100 million acres of white oak forest by 2070. Dendrifund Executive Director Barbara Hunt said, "No one cares about the regeneration until you tell them it's going to impact their bourbon."
It almost makes me wonder if we see this craze right now. We had a episode on it recently about American single malt, and we're still trying to figure out the exact federal definition of what American single malts are. But there's a lot of requests for these single malts to not have to be aged in American white oak. So it almost begs the question if some of this American single malt movement, because it's growing in popularity in young drinkers especially, if it's almost, I say this in a laughing matter and with no degree of rebuke, if it's almost contrived as like but suddenly let's pay attention to this now because it's kind of creating almost a diversion from bourbons and ryes in order to give them a little bit of breathing room. And if that's the case, no rebuke here. All power to you. There's a problem and you're looking for a way to fix it.
It sounds great to me.
I personally see this actually in my field. So, as many of you know, I play clarinet, a wooden instrument. It's an African blackwood. And African blackwood trees are also experiencing severe critical endangerment. So they are very, very close to extinction, quite possibly closer to extinction than white oak. And I mean, you don't really see it unless you look into it, but there's a lot of technological advancements that band technicians and luthiers who work with wood and instruments, so like violin repair people, there's a lot of advancements that they are making in their own field. So a lot of the keys on the clarinet have cork pads. They're transitioning from cork to leather. And they're also transitioning from African blackwood to woods like grenadilla, which is a very dark, kind of porous wood, I think. I'm going to have to look a little bit more into that. And then cocoboa wood. So they're trying to convert their own technological supplies built for clarinets and oboes, because they come from the same kind of tree and materials, to different building materials. Also to make them last longer, because cork pads do not last as long as leather pads. So if they can find ways to revolutionize, and I'll dare to be naive about it, but maybe like genetically modify objects to help speed the growth of white oaks.
That's interesting.
So you're doing that with, crops, fruits and veggies. Can you look into research into doing that? I'll dare to be naive about it, but I'd love to see what people think about that.
This will be a story we keep watching.
Yeah, this one's important to the industry and important to, frankly, the world. Trees are important, people. Trees are very important.
Plant a tree.
Yeah.
Plant a tree.
Even if it's on the side of the house. I did it once.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So, Elora, this story I've got for you. Are Gen Z people really drinking less? An August 2023 Gallup poll found that 62% of adults under the age of 35 drink.
Now, keep in mind here, people under 35, not all of them are Gen Z, okay?
That's true.
I'm right here.
Okay. That's down.
That's generation that's being ridiculed here.
That's down from 72% just 2 decades earlier, 2023.
Or 2003.
2003, exactly. Is the lower alcohol consumption due to higher consciousness about health and lifestyle, or is it about something else?
Oh, well, what is it?
We can't afford to buy alcohol. We're all in college. We're working $12 an hour jobs. What money do you want us to come up with to afford to drink? Because trust me, a lot of us have plenty of reasons to drink.
So it's less about the higher consciousness about health and lifestyle. It's more about a higher consciousness of financial situation.
All of that's been drilled down our throats. It's like Red Ribbon Week. I mean, I don't know how much of a thing that is anymore, but it's like, don't do drugs, kids, don't drink, kids, like, and you hear all this type of social media about all the things that are bad. And okay, yes, but the reality of it is how many times have people on this podcast and audiences heard me saying, I'm a college student, I can't afford that, or $40, that's a huge ask for me.
And it's not even just in whiskey. It's the whole scope of alcohol.
Yeah.
We've seen an astronomical jump in the price of, a 6-pack of beer.
Yeah.
From, something that was once upon a time $4 or $5, now it's $10, $12.
I'm an old guy. I remember buying beer, get this, for 99 cents a 6-pack. Now, I will tell you, that beer was not very good.
But it was beer.
But it was beer.
I couldn't get Mike's or Iron Chef unless I want to break out a 20 for both or even more than that.
Exactly. So a study in Britain earlier this year found consumers that were aged between 20 and 24 are almost half as likely to spend on alcohol for the home than consumers over 75.
Wait a minute, I'm not in that age bracket.
Yeah.
So in other words, young people don't buy stuff, old people do.
Well, young people are buying other things that
individuals
over 75 aren't.
Okay. The report suggests the report suggests a significant number of Gen Z are shifting focus away from drinking alcohol both inside and outside the home. They're opting instead for something called sober socializing.
Okay, listen. Listen. Elora's face says it all. And listeners, I wish you could see it. Because it's so completely accurate. Sober socializing, I'm just going to say it, is a bullshit term. Okay? I've never heard that term before in my life.
Never heard it either.
It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a sober socializing. It's just people going to socialize and electing not to drink. There's no fanfare around anything called sober socializing. Oh my God. It's just absurd.
Gen Z and maybe take your Jen out. I'm worried about you watching. But why do you have to have a term for everything?
That's a good question.
Great term. Great.
Because
that doesn't exist.
It's 8:31. How do you have the brain to come up with a whole concept when I barely have the concept to come up with a whole paragraph of just 5 sentences? Why do you have to come up with a whole word? It's
People like labels.
That's true.
like-
As an anthropologist, yes.
Just call it like it is. I mean, I guess I do both. My best friends and I.
Yep.
I've accidentally sober socialized. Like,
Why do you have to have a term for everything?
Well,
it's goofy.
Well, people
Anyways.
who do drink tend to do so primarily as a treat or to relax or to mark a special occasion.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
2/3 of these
We
consumers.
got all of our homework done in college.
Woohoo! Almost
I'm
two.
going to be really honest with you. That is our motivation.
Almost 2/3 of these consumers said they worry about the emotional impact of alcohol and would like to learn more about drinking mindfully.
To me, I mean, I haven't read the article that those quotes come from. I feel like they could be expounded upon more, though, and why people are saying it, that there's an emotional component to drinking, because there is, especially if you're doing so in public at a bar. I think a lot of people are a lot more aware of their surroundings and the impacts of not being aware of their surroundings when having alcohol. And being mindful about it, I think, couples with that pretty well. I don't know. I think that whoever wrote that article probably could have
Worked on it a little
worked
bit more.
on a little bit more
Yeah.
because they,
Actually talk to it, but
yeah.
they're not-
yeah, because those quotes
There's
make
too
it,
many-
yeah.
There's just too many articles just in every single field that whenever they are like Gen Z ... I'm like, oh god.
It's a bit
here
like
we
they're
go.
it's a bit like they're talking to these people as if they live in an echo chamber and not wanting to look a bit further into why they're saying that.
Well, it's interesting because the writer went on to say that Gen Z consumers say they're choosing low and no alcohol drinks because of their lower calorie content
Okay.
and added functional benefits such as probiotics and vitamins. I'm hearing both of you right now, and neither of you are saying anything, but I'm hearing you saying, that's bullshit.
Well, I
because
mean,
I'm
like-
not drinking no alcohol drinks because of probiotics.
Well, the lower calorie content, I can go like, okay, yes, beer has a lot of calories in it. I'm very well aware of that. But when you said probiotic, but I just, what the hell are you talking about?
Are you treating
Just-
us like we're all vegans?
Like, just
serious.
buy some cranberry juice and avoid the vodka, I guess. I don't know.
or put vodka in the cranberry juice.
Then make a screwball. I don't know. Like, I mean,
Kind of goofy, but all right.
it's there. All of these, I get so fired up whenever I see a headline mentioning Gen Z because 95% of the articles that are written, you know,
They treat you guys like you're aliens. Like, look at what they're doing. Look at what these weird specimens of the human race are up to. It's
even when
weird.
politicians discuss us, it's like, how can we treat these young specimens? How can we control our environment? And we're like, we don't give a shit about our environment right now. We can't afford to live. We
Well-
care about the environment. That translates to stop global warming. And then it's like, well, we're just going to stop it. And we're like, you are really, like,
Well-
you overshot the golf.
Well,
This is an out of park.
well,
You
it's
don't even fit in this golf course by that shot.
but here's the funny thing. There's evidence that lesser drinking amounts, especially here in the U.S., is because of what you said early on. Price is influencing attitudes more than anything else. And you've said it how many times?
Yeah, I've said it however many times. Like, $50 is a huge ask. I have severe financial anxiety. Both Dad and Hannah can attest to this. It is terrible. It is terrible financial anxiety.
So price influence.
In my field, alcoholism is a huge thing. It is a huge thing, and it's something I have to be wary of. But it's also that we just can't afford it.
Yeah.
We can't afford access to it.
Well, like you said, price influencing attitudes of the young consumer, the 21 to 25-year-olds, you just don't have disposable income. You're at your first entry-level jobs, and everything is more expensive, alcohol included.
Dad and I had a literal phone call today about budget.
Yeah. I just thought that was a kind of a fun article to throw in there on you. You and I and everybody else probably knows that it's money more than anything else. It's keeping you guys from drinking.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe that's a good thing.
I mean, yeah, but we also just can't afford to live.
Yeah.
People, we need to do something about it.
Well, also, I mean, I think there's all going out and being drunk. For me, like, I've never really enjoyed
cool.
being drunk. And that's really the other thing, too. When you go out in public and you see somebody else who's way beyond their limit, I mean, there's secondhand embarrassment is so real for them. And it doesn't matter if they're a guy or a girl, you just look at them and go, what's wrong with you? Like, it's really kind of pathetic, quite frankly. And it's this awareness that when I go out in public and if I'm going to order a drink, whether it's to have with a dinner or I'm at a bar, I'm going to be really cautious because I don't want to look like that person.
Yeah.
Because they look really absurd. And I think that reputational awareness is playing a part with younger people today than maybe it did for other generations.
Yeah.
But I don't.
It never crossed my mind.
Yeah. So okay. So it it never crossed your mind. I wasn't someone who went out to college parties or, the sorority. I didn't do anything like that. I didn't find it an appealing place to be by any stretch of the imagination. It was a place that I avoided like the plague more often than not. But when I would go out in public and I would see people who were very drunk, and it would be just at your typical mom and pop restaurant, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you like that?
I saw so much of that last year. It's amazing how my college now is different from my undergrad college. It is amazing, the stark contrasts. So at football games, I was a band TA, and beer was allowed in the seats, as is typical for most university football games. I understand that. I cannot tell you how many people I would just see, just staring out into open blank space by a building and just be like muttering to themselves or just, being really, really loose. And then other people, like there was one time I solved a problem and a guy, like a whole party of drunk guys were just like, "Oh, your day." I was like, shut up. Like, just move on.
It's not cool.
No.
It's just not, it's not cool.
I think you guys are more aware.
Later on, last year, I had to go to Vegas for a band gig. You don't make eye contact with anybody there. The moment you make eye contact, the moment you put yourself in a very vulnerable position, you walk past everybody. You walk past everyone. You do not make eye contact. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's eye-opening. It's scary. I personally don't like being involved in it. Hannah and I are very, very introverted people, so a party scene really isn't our scene. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's move on. Here's some whiskeys to search for your next scavenger hunt. Jim Beam Old Overholt, we just drank some of that tonight, has just released a premium new cask strength rye whiskey. Everybody knows Old Overholt. It's Jim Beam's budget rye. We mentioned earlier, it dates back to the 1800s. Jim Beam acquired Old Overholt back in 1987, and it's known as the bartender's favorite budget rye.
That's what I said.
Yeah. And since 2020, the core expression has received a lot of love. It's increased its proof from 80 to 86. It's increased its age statement from 3 years to 4. We're now at 4 years. Jim Beam has even added some higher new end expressions. A bottled-in-bond version, a limited edition 11-year-old bottling at 92.6 proof, a stronger 114 proof version, as well as an extra aged cask strength expression, a 121 proof whiskey that's been aged for a full decade.
I kind of feel like the Old Overholt line is almost an equivalent to like a rescue dog. Like it's just one of those things where, yeah, it may not look the cutest. It's got a dark bottle and a red screw cap. It's not sitting next to Blanton's by any means.
Yeah.
But when you have it, you're like, you're just a good friend.
Yeah.
You're just a good, solid buddy. And
I'm drinking it right now, and I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
And earlier this year, Jim Beam launched a Overholt. It's made in the style of Monongahela rye with a mash bill of 80% rye and 20% barley.
No corn.
It was
That's
common
as one of the oldest.
Yep.
So the latest cask strength rye comes from 11-year-old. It was distilled and barreled in 2012, matured on the Beam campus, not in Pennsylvania, on the lower floors of warehouses. Mash bill of just over 51% rye with undisclosed other grains. It's a little bit lower than last year's. This year's 11-year-old is 53.7 or 107 proof with an MSRP of $100. That's
an expensive that's an expensive rescue puppy.
Yep.
But okay.
Distiller notes: nose, vanilla and tobacco. Palate: allspice, vanilla, caramel and charred oak, and full-bodied finish with notes of rye. Our second bottle, Jack Daniel's, goes back to Coy Hill.
This was the Coy Hill was a really, really popular edition of Jack Daniel's while I was working at the liquor stores. Every time, we had any kind of shipment of Coy Hill, it was the first to go.
Yep. So back in 2021, Jack Daniel's set the whiskey world on fire with its Coy Hill release. Coy Hill warehouses 8 and 13 are at the highest elevation on the brand's property. While the distillery has not released any tasting notes on this, it's immediately capturing attention. Obviously, since the first one came out so highly regarded, this next one's going to snap up as well. Jack Daniel's mash bill of 80% corn, 12% malt barley, and 8% rye, aged just shy of 11 years. And it's coming from the middle to top floors of Warehouse 8. ABV of 61%, varies because it's coming from multiple barrels, 61 to 68%, and an MSRP of $80, which frankly is not that bad.
That's not that bad at all.
That high of a proof.
Yep.
I mean,
we recently got
I didn't even ask for me, but
yeah, we recently got a Jack Daniel's barrel proof rye, Jack the Ripper.
we got a Jack Daniel's barrel proof Did Dad allow this?
Yes.
Dad bought it for me,
Yes.
actually.
It's actually one from our whiskey club.
Let this day be marked in history.
Yeah.
But you know what? It is so delicious.
I
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
That is a great rye, and I love a barrel proof rye.
Our local whiskey group bought a couple of barrels, and we've got quite a few, or at least a barrel, and I was able to get 2 bottles, so it's pretty cool. My third whiskey, Russell's Reserve, reveals a high ABV bourbon. Campari Group owned Wild Turkey continues its exploration of its warehouse locations. The single Rickhouse series debuted in 2022 with Camp Nelson C. Camp Nelson F followed in 2023, and the series is exploring whiskey terroir, examining how specific barrel locations influence the flavor. Each whiskey release comes from a select number of rare stocks. The latest Russell's Reserve single Rickhouse release comes from Camp Nelson Rickhouse B. Rickhouse B is centrally located on the property, and the 7th floor Rickhouse was built back in 1946 on higher ground than the others. So it's getting more sun exposure. This third edition of the series, we had a feeling the bourbon that was going to be best was way up high in the Rickhouse. So the higher we went, the hotter the whiskey got. The Russell's team selected barrels from the 6th floor of the warehouse, bottled at 60.1% ABV or 120 proof. It's got a steep price tag of $300. I think that's going to be a little bit of a stretch.
It's a no from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Distiller tasting notes: oak, vanilla, sweet cream, and cinnamon spice. Palate: robust flavors: cherry, raisin, clove, and spearmint. Showcasing rich honey, oak, and char.
Wild Turkey likes their honey notes. Anything in that family likes to talk about honey.
And then lastly, Bardstown Bourbon Company releases High Wheat Bourbon. Bardstown, Kentucky, self-proclaimed bourbon capital of the world. Bardstown Bourbon Company might be most modern and sleekest operation in the state. The company is known for sourcing barrels from other distilleries in other states. It also contract distills for numerous brands, producing different styles of whiskey using various mash bills. Bardstown Bourbon Company High Wheat is, according to the distillery, it's the first high wheat whiskey on the market, with its mash bill of 51% corn, 39% wheat, which is really a high percentage of wheat.
It is.
And 8% malt barley. Barrel entry proof is relatively low at only 108, which experience tells me that wheat loves that low barrel entry proof. It's aged 6 years, and it's going to be bottled at 106 proof.
We've always said that wheat is softer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it would only make sense that it would go for a lower proof instead of something like a high proof like 120.
Right. And distiller tasting notes here, there's complexity, a lightness to it. There's a little brown sugar, vanilla custard, ripe peach, honey, and some baked apple. The nice thing about this one, priced at $50.
I would say okay. Like,
Yeah.
I'd be open to trying it. It could be a good autumn.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then
you got your apple spice.
If that palate is
Yeah.
actually
It's all subjective.
Awesome.
But, it's all advertising. You gotta, go for flavors people will like.
so this one, since this is the third edition, Bardstown is also releasing an Origin Series Experience Tasting Kit, a set of 3 small sample bottles of the whiskeys at $35.
That's not bad, though, actually.
So I don't know how big those bottles are, but let's say they're 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces. Hey, you get to experience what they're doing.
You get a flight. I mean, it's a flight for $35. That's not bad, honestly.
That's what you'd send me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whiskey ferry.
The whiskey ferry.
The whiskey ferry sends them to you.
That's cute. I like that.
So, as always, to learn more about the stories we've just talked about, and many others, of course, go to our Whiskey for the Ages episode archive page, and you'll find a link to the news stories on the site. We'll also list all of the reporting news sources as well. We want to give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely, yeah. And be sure to check out all of our episodes from previous seasons. I know we have a lot of new plans. I think, Hannah, you've talked a lot about the survey, so have you, Dad, about the final episode of this season being the review.
The listeners pick.
Yep.
That the listeners pick. And we do want to let you guys know, hear it here first, what the options are going to be for you guys to vote on, what we're going to be drinking for the very last episode of this season. So here are the options. Get out your pens and papers. Knob Creek 15 year. 15 year. We have had the 12 year.
Yes.
It's very remarkable. 15 years an option now. Parker's Heritage Orange Curacao. This one was up for an option last season as well.
And the previous season, and I will tell you, this is the last time it's going in the survey.
Eventually, we're just going to open it whether you like it or not. We need to know. Keep in mind that...
Guys, if you have to open it, let me hold her.
Okay.
Well, you'll get...
That was from several years ago.
You'll get the Whiskey Fairy will deliver, I promise. But remember this Parker's Heritage coming from the Heaven Hill Distillery. Part of the proceeds of all of those purchases go towards ALS research and its foundation. So very important one there. We also are putting up Little Book Chapter 5. This chapter is called The Invitation. This one was up last year as well.
I will tell you, if I'm fortunate enough to find a Chapter 6 or something different in the Little Book line, I will flex and put that in instead. But for right now, we're looking at Chapter 5.
That's the most recent one that we have on the docket. And then for the very last option that you guys get to pick, Blood Oath Pact 10.
Now, we like the Blood Oath stuff.
Yes.
These ones... I've got a thing at my apartment of the Blood Oath still.
Yep.
Yeah.
These Blood Oath ones are completely experimental. The finishing of them varies from pact to pact. All of the proofs are at 98.6, which happens to be the average human body temperature. Blood Oath makes a lot of sense. Very, very clever. So be watching on our social medias, Facebook and LinkedIn particularly, for those polls to go up for you guys to vote on. Our next episode will be us reviewing the one that you guys pick. Very exciting. And be sure to send your comments about this particular episode. We hit a lot of heavy topics today, but I think it was, in my opinion, the best history episode that we've had thus far. And
I think it's the most influential.
I think so too.
I enjoyed putting it together.
This one was a great one.
I learned some stuff. I still can't believe that much alcohol was being consumed in 1830.
And seeing how it all mixed with everything else going on societally is really, mind blown all the time. So leave your comments on this one. Let us know what you think. And make sure to subscribe to the show so you can be notified as soon as we upload the new episode, especially that listener's pick episode that's going to be coming up next. And then for the next season when that does get released.
That'll be very, very exciting. And for any of you experts out there on any of the topics that we talked about, please share your thoughts. Like, we really, really love to learn. If you're a history teacher, or if you're an English teacher, if you're a chemist at a university, or just, someone experimenting.
My fellow feminists, reach out.
Seriously. Seriously reach out. Let us know what you think, because we all really, really love to learn. We're all very open-minded people. We really would love to hear your thoughts and your comments. So this is an open discussion forum, as always. And I'm going to continue with that as always point. As always, we end with the clinging of the glasses. I don't know what y'all, looks like you guys have fun chairs.
Yes.
Anyways. Yeah, anyways, cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
Yep. And thanks for listening in. Good night, everybody. Cheers.